Welcome to the 111 Approach podcast, your go-to space for deep thoughts, real talk, and exploration of everything from spirituality to self-development and the mysteries of life with some light-hearted humour along the way. I'm your host, Lakshmi, aka the 1 Minute Healer, and each episode will dive into different topics, sometimes personal, sometimes thought-provoking, but always authentic. So whether you're here for some new perspectives, inspiration, or just a fresh take on the world with a bit of randomness thrown into the mix, you're definitely in the right place. So what are you waiting for? Let's get into it.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the 111 Approach podcast with me, Lakshmi, aka the 1 Minute Healer. So I've got a very special guest for you today who goes by the name of Buffy. And no, she's not the Buffy, the Vampire Slayer that we all know and love. Shout out to Sarah Michelle Gellar. Also, I do remember I used to have a massive crush on the guy who played Angel. So yeah, shout out to David Borenziez, or however we say his name. But no, in front of me, well, virtually, I have the very beautiful, very talented and multifaceted Buffy Rowe, who is a naturopathic nutritional therapist, but I have also rebranded her a self-care specialist, and you'll find out why later. And Buffy is a BANT, and no, that's not short for banter, but she does have really good banter, and a CHNSC registered nutritionist and coach. She has specialist training in eating psychology and behavior change. So is my absolute pleasure to introduce Buffy. Buffy, welcome to the 111 Approach podcast. Could you please tell us a little bit about your origin story? Because I know you've got such a fascinating way of how you came into nutrition.
Yeah, it's kind of a long story. I think everyone's got a story, haven't they? So originally, I haven't always been a nutritionist and coach and everything. Originally, I was a violinist. My parents introduced me and my siblings to the violin at a super young age. And through primary school years, this was kind of my thing. Sometimes I loved it, sometimes I didn't. But if you skip forward to late teens, I decided to go to music college rather than uni. And that's kind of where all the adventures began, I suppose. I'd had a couple of summers of epically fun music tours with other musicians, and musicians kind of just felt like my people. And we feel good when we're around our people, right? So off I went to college. In the background, when I was growing up, I wasn't always particularly well. And at 16, it turned out that I had like an autoimmune thyroid condition called Graves' disease that many people have kind of heard of. I remember the day that I was told that I had it, actually, I was totally gutted. And whilst it was good in some ways to understand why I was exhausted and anxious and a bit overweight and etc., I really hated it. I took loads of medications, had a procedure to get the thyroid down to a normal size, all good. It was in a controlled situation, which then just needed to be managed as if it was hypothyroidism. So it was all good. The blood markers made sense. The thyroid was functioning sort of okay. It was all stable, but I always just felt a bit meh, if you know what I mean. So it was in my 20s, I guess, I started to notice how much better I could feel in myself with food and exercise changes. I remember going to the doctors one day and it was just game changing because I'd had a blood test review and they got these results back and they were like, I'm not really sure why, but you don't need to be on such a high dose of thyroxine anymore. And that was it. I was on a mission. All I'd done was essentially change the way that I looked after myself, to put it sort of broadly. And I was then on a mission just to keep doing that. And that was a big drive, just progress in how I felt. So it wasn't necessarily my size or how much of any one particular element I had. It was how I kind of felt inside me. I'd also worked with a homeopath who a friend had recommended, and that was kind of my eye-opening moment to alternative and complementary practices, and he was big on mindset shifts. So it was from then that I started to feel a real difference about myself. So then, I was talking a lot, years later, as my interest in health was just growing and growing and growing, and I didn't really want to be tied to the freelance violin world anymore, which was super fun, but it was a little bit unpredictable. The lifestyle was quite crazy. I had 2 young kids that I wanted to be on the ground for. So I just decided to follow my new passion and retrain. I knew that a huge impact and part of my own personal journey was all about mindset and emotional regulation work. So that's where my kind of additional training came in, because in order to really help people, I found that I just needed to have the tools and the training to be able to help them make the changes that I'd helped making, if that makes sense. So that's the story.
Wow, thank you so much. That's so interesting because you came, like you said, from a musical background, and it was only obviously because you yourself ended up getting quite ill that you decided to take responsibility for your own health and well-being, right? So, fun fact, first and foremost, before we delve into that, when we were doing this little screen call, I realized that we've got so many crossovers and similarities because I got so obsessed when, do you remember Vanessa May
Yeah.
when she was like really big, that violinist? And I was so obsessed with her that I was like, right, I want to learn the violin now. So I signed up to do violin lessons at school and I did like 4 lessons, I think. And then I ended up doing, it was like end of year report. So I took an extracurricular and I got an A in my school report. And then over summer, as you are as a teenager, you get obsessed with something else. So then I came back to school the next term, and my music teacher was like, right, when we're getting your next grade, like, nah, I'm not into it anymore. Then I just kind of parked it. So I could say I did 4 lessons of violin. Um, but yeah, a budding Vanessa May or Buffy Rowe, I was not. But yeah, that kind of made me chuckle when we were chatting about that. But you started at like age 4, right?
Yeah, there's a structured method. It's the Suzuki method. A lot of people haven't heard of it, but it's a method that involves your mum. It really is involved as well. You have one weekly lesson. You practice every day, no matter whether you're on holiday, whether you've got school, whether you've got whatever you've got. So that was kind of, for me and my sister and brother, we all did it. We all learned to play the violin. And I loved it. I mean, I loved the ethos of it. So there was a lot of listening, a lot of practice, a lot of repetition, a lot of group work, and ultimately your mum sitting in on the lessons, being your sort of backup teacher when you weren't in your lessons type thing. And it was amazing. It taught me a lot. It taught me a huge amount about practice, how to break things down, how to stick with stuff, how to improve. I mean, like I said, it wasn't always something that I wanted to do. It's quite an intense relationship that you have with your teacher and your mum, who's also trying to be your mum, just on normal mum things. But there's no doubt about it. When you practice stuff and when you repeat it and you have encouragement, you get to where you want to go, right? And so that's definitely something that is the case with when I'm working with coaching clients and things. You start really small. You pick something that sparks your interest out of whether it's a dietary or a lifestyle point, and you practice it. And it's the change in mindset. You practice and you have encouragement from me. Sometimes people work in groups, so there's accountability and support and encouragement, which is all basically the same principles of the most effective way to learn anything.
And that's so right as well, because it all comes down to discipline, right? And sometimes discipline gets a bad rep actually, because they think, oh, discipline, it means harsh, it means rigid, it means really strict. But in essence, that's what you kind of need. You need that consistency, you need that determination and discipline, and you need that monitoring, because without that, I'm not going to say you're not going to get your achievements or goals. It's going to be a little bit more laborious, and you're probably not going to get there as quickly or as effectively as you would if you had those regimes or routines in place, right?
Yeah, I think what I would say is it's about consistency. And so sometimes, like, discipline is quite an interesting one, because a lot of people, quite often when they're trying to make changes, they berate themselves and they give themselves quite a hard time for not being disciplined or not having willpower. Beat ourselves up about all sorts of things, right? But what I try and encourage people to do as we're building new habits and as we're making changes to something which is so personal and fundamental, how we feed ourselves or how we choose to live, etc., is just to start really small. So the kind of discipline, if you like, is committing to deciding what you think is manageable, even if it's just one really small thing, getting really comfortable with that and building on it, and you building on the habit and being kind of committed to your one thing that you're starting, if that makes sense.
Well, of course it does, because the 1-1-1 approach is all about choosing one thing, taking it 1 minute at a time and taking it one day at a time. And it's, again, those small bite-sized chunks, focusing on consistency rather than trying to change up every single aspect of your life at one point. And I think that's where you were so right. We tend to kind of berate ourselves a lot when we slip up, and we've got to just keep remembering we're not perfect. Nothing is really perfect ever, so we will make mistakes. In fact, just this morning I had to catch myself. I was doing my little morning affirmation and my little ritual, and I don't know why, I just stopped. I was mid writing my little affirmation statement, put my pen down, and I just walked into the other room, and I had to stop myself. I was like, look, me, you haven't finished your ritual yet. I was like, I don't even know why I came into the room, and I had to catch myself and come back. And I was like, no, finish what you're doing first. So just disclaimer, everyone, even though, we are quote unquote experts in our field, we also still make some mistakes, or we still also kind of go off the path a little. But it's all about, like you said, is being aware and being responsible for yourself. And I think this is one of the key areas that I wanted to go into in this episode with you. Is you said yourself you were making excuses or blaming external environments when you first got diagnosed with this autoimmune disease. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Because then you did say something that was so beautiful, and I put it down in our notes, is that, you then realize, actually, my body, my responsibility, and that's where your mindset and your shift came. So I'd love for you to just delve in and give us a bit more information about that.
When I was diagnosed with the thyroid condition, I was really quite young to have that diagnosis. And being adolescent anyway is quite a kind of fiery, angry, confusing kind of time anyway. So I couldn't really figure it out. And I felt a lot of different things about it, like it was a relief to know what was going on, but I was also really frustrated. And it was when I started to make some health changes myself, and I could feel that my body responding, that there became a kind of connection between what I could actually do. And I guess that's what we could say, like taking responsibility for improving it, for supporting it, for actually being quite kind to my body, because it's trying its best. Our bodies are constantly trying to rejuvenate and grow and heal and all the rest of it. And we often are quite unkind to our bodies. So it's just a kind of mindset, we're on the same team, and I actually really, to genuinely care about, rather than sort of be frustrated by it and put up with it or whatever it is, was to realize that it was that kind of an empowering moment. You realize that you can make a difference. Teeny tiny differences are significant. And you just start to change the way you treat yourself.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And when you said that, I just got goosebumps all over my body, because you're so right. We take this body of ours for granted. Like, we all do it. We just assume that it's just always going to work and it's always going to be fine. And then when it doesn't, I'm just recovering from a flu cold. You might be able to hear it in my voice. And when I do get ill, the first thing I do is, oh gosh, someone gave me this, or I caught it off someone else, and I can't believe this. And it's absolutely fine to do that. And you're valid, you quite young when you got the diagnosis, but even if you got a diagnosis later on in life, your first instinct is to kind of feel a bit sorry for yourself and like, why me? And that's completely fine and valid. But it's then moving through that and knowing that, okay, this is happening. What can I do? I can sit there and blame others and feel sad, and I can get stuck in that emotion or that mindset. Or I can think, right, this is happening for a reason. My body is trying to tell me something. It's obviously not in balance. I now need to take responsibility for giving my body the most optimal environment. And this brings us nicely onto what I wanted to delve into, and why I then, said to you that you're not just a nutritionist, you are a self-care specialist, because we were talking about the foundation of what self-care is. Self-care has become such a buzzword, especially since the pandemic, but it's been kind of, I feel, marketed in a way of like, right, self-care day, facials, manicures, a bubble bath, which are all lovely things to do. But real self-care, I feel, is actually taking care of what our body needs, and our body needs good hydration and good nutrition, right? That's the basis of what we need to be doing. So can you just elaborate a little bit on what you feel is the root cause and the foundation of what that word means to you, self-care?
Yeah. I think that actually maybe at the beginning of my training as a nutritionist, I was thinking about nourishment, food and hydration and rest and all of those things, but not in equal measures. What I have learned and practiced over the years since I've really kind of committed and got into this and started working with clients is that there are so many different little, if you think of us, I like to think of us as like we've all got little kind of dials inside us. We've got our nutrition, we've got hydration, but some people think of it as part of nutrition. We've got our sleep quality, we've got our social connections, we've got the things that we're passionate about. We've got our, there are so many different elements to our life that we all need to feel like we're in balance. And the nutrition is one hugely important part of that. If we're not in balance and aligned, we tend to feel quite stressed. That's quite a stressful thing to hold on to. And when we're stressed, our bodies are in a kind of constant state of tension. All the kind of, our nervous systems are in the wrong state. They're in the fight and flight. They're not resting. They're not digesting. They're not healing. So when sometimes people come and start work, they're not necessarily expecting the lifestyle category to be quite as significant as I always really feel it is. Because if we can be eating a whole food diet. We could be having our 2 litres of water a day, but we can be super, super stressed. We've all seen those people who I've got to go to the gym and I've got to do yoga 3 times a week and I've got to do this and I've got to turn up for my session of relaxation. But throughout all of that, their stress management, because life is very stressful, right, is they just need a little bit of a help. And that's very common with people who are working towards healthy weight loss. They feel like they're doing all the right things. And the one bit that's really missing is the self-nurturing of themselves in order for them to be in their own flow and their bodies just to do as their bodies are designed to do. That sounds a bit airy-fairy, but the diet and hydration, if that's what you're only focusing on and you're focusing it with sort of almost an aggressive kind of commitment, that's quite stressful. That's not going to necessarily get you to that healthy state. And for that reason, I always encourage an 80-20 balance, like you were saying earlier. I heard you say, about when we make mistakes, and it's often not, it feels like a mistake sometimes, but it's not so much a mistake. It's more life just being life, getting in the way. So that it's a real balance. And when somebody gets to their 80-20 balance, that's what means it's going to be a long-term lifestyle change. And that's the nice, calm, balanced place to get to, ideally.
So true. And yeah, you're right. They're not, I want to quote the infamous Bob Ross and the Joy of Painting. And he's like, there are no mistakes in life. They're just happy accidents. And, like, shout out to my mom for introducing me to Bob Ross. We used to spend our Sundays just watching some reruns of him. If you don't know who Bob Ross is, go and Google him. He's amazing. God rest his soul. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes that kind of routine and that regiment of like, right, I have to do this. It's like, we don't have to do anything. All we have to do is really just be in tune with our body. And that will look differently for everyone, because although we are made up of the same components, our bodies work differently because we're in different environments, right? So you've got to, I guess, do what's right for you and start getting more in touch and in tune with your own energy and your own wants, needs and requirements. And I guess that's where your approach, Buffy, is just so natural and so nurturing, in that there's no one size fits all for everyone, because everyone is different. And I love that you bring that kind of softness to the way you work with your clients, because it's not just about nutrition and hydration. It is about looking at everything as a whole. And that's why energy work is so important, because it goes hand in hand with things that you are doing for your clients, which is why I guess we kind of really sort of we're drawn to each other, because I think the way we work is quite similar. And, we met, I think, was it networking up? Was it BNI first that we met?
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're part of the beautiful group that is Soul Collaboration. So we reunited there, didn't we? And then we got to know each other a bit more. And it's just been amazing journey. And if our listeners are interested in doing some work with you, where can they find you? And is there anything else before we wrap up that you'd like to sort of put out there?
I know time goes really quickly, doesn't it? If anybody wants to see a little bit more information or get in touch, it's probably best just to do it through my website, which is buffyrowe.com, and I offer a complimentary introductory call to anybody who's curious or who's got even just an inkling that something that they're putting up with or something that's just not feeling good to them, that they want to find out maybe how I can support them or work with them. Some people find themselves being a little bit anxious about talking about nutrition and lifestyle because it feels quite exposing, and it's a very, very personal thing. And I would just encourage anybody just who's got an instinct just to follow it and just get in touch.
Love that. And I will put your links in the show notes below, so make sure you do check those out. And, just to wrap up, we always say that if you've got one body, right, and you need to look after it, a laptop and your phone and everything else, if it gets broken, you can get replacement. But this body, to a certain extent, you can replace certain parts of it, but it is as a whole, you've only got one. And so it is really important that we do look after it, not from just a nutritional side of things, but also, like I said, the self-care and just the self-love that we give to ourselves. And remembering that post-parental care, the only person that's responsible for this body of yours is, guess what, people? You. So, just a thought to A, give it some gratitude, and B, give it a bit of attention, because we give attention out to so many different things in our life, just external forces and external things, but really remembering that the only thing that you're really responsible for by your kids is yourself. So just making sure you're putting a little bit of energy and effort into yourself. And as always, I'm going to end this podcast with a 1-minute meditation. So I'm going to invite you all to close your eyes. But if you are driving, disclaimer, please do not close your eyes. Do not want to be responsible for any sort of accident. But if it is safe for you to do so, just closing your eyes. We're going to take a nice deep breath in through our nose. Hold for a few seconds and then breathe out through our mouth. Really just relax into your body. Just follow my voice and guidance. Just want us to take a moment to really sit in this vessel of our physical being and just giving yourself a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of grace, reminding ourselves that although the world can be quite stressful, there is one place that we can always come into, one place that we can truly call our home, and it is our bodies. These are magnificent vessels of blood, skin, bones, muscles, organs, all working together as one to keep us alive, to keep us here doing the things that we love, being around the people that we love. So taking another moment just to really physically give yourself a hug and just remember that we have this special space within us, and it's something that's very sacred and it should be looked after and loved. So with that, just taking another deep breath in through our nose, holding for a few seconds, and then breathing out through our bodies, or out through our bodies, out through our mouths. There you go. And just release. So thank you so much, Buffy. Honestly, it's been a pleasure to have you. I do ask each of my guests to share with the listeners any piece of advice that you have or you were given that really made an impact and that you'd like to share.
One mantra, if you like, or saying that has always resonated with me is life works out best for the people who make the best of how life works out. And I feel very strongly about that as an intention, because if I just turn it back onto me for a second, through, I don't know, having a diagnosis when I was younger and discovering how passionate I felt about my own health, and came all the way through that, just learning about how to be nicer to myself, or how to grow, how to learn, how to interact, how to connect, just all of that stuff. I'm not sure that I would have had the same journey if I hadn't had a diagnosis, which at the time I didn't make the best of it at all. I didn't want it at all. But long term, it's ended up being something I love doing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I love that. I really, really love that. So if you would like to reach out to Buffy, please do go follow her on her socials. Again, I'll leave all the links down below and you can book in that complimentary call with her. I will highly recommend you do so. And I will see you all next time on the next episode of the 111 Approach podcast. And I leave you, as I always do, with love, light, and blessings.